I am from the Brothers of Light. We find it appropriate at this time that we are not interfering, but that we have the power to intervene, because there have been so many calls from the planet of Earth in order to intervene with the momentum of the old programs. It is in the old programming that the deceit and the delivery of what was once called trusted information has shifted and has changed. And therefore, as we can perceive the interruptions in the frequency, the modulations of the frequencies, the interference and the static of the communication, which is most happening on the planet of Earth in waves in which the human is consulting one to another with the social media. And so what you call social media is a grasping of information from the atmosphere, which is projected forward by those humans that find themselves emotionally entrapped or entailed and in partly being controlled by what the division has been for a long period of time. And so the ego, loving to have communication and loving to have observation and loving to have its way in which it is noticed, and there are parts of the communication that seem as though they are more highly energized than others. That is a frequency of the ego, which is nourished by confusion and is also nourished at periods of time when there are counteracting behaviors. And this is a trigger. It is a trigger through all of humanity, not just in English, but in other languages, from person to person and from county to county, state to state, town to town, city to city, person to person, and also between the union of the disciplines of the past of the human being. And therefore we say this is a new subject for you to consider, that the disciplines of the past are no longer applicable to what is happening in the moment. And therefore it requires a really clear mind. Well-rested humans are more apt to respond from a place of awareness than those who are not able to sufficiently rest the body, mind, and spirit. And so we do suggest that. But also in your interactions one with the other is to remember that you are not at first a communicator. At first you are a receptor. When you're a small child and born, all you do is receive and absorb information. So those programs, whether they were interpreted correctly or not, are still in your body, mind, spirit, and they are in the biosphere that incorporates the earth plane. The earth plane has 3 frequencies that have been delivered for long periods of time and are derived from the application of being a 7-dimensional human, which means 7 chakras, and you do have the 7 dimensions, but you're not capable of tuning into each one at a time or being able to use them in the strongest way possible. So know that as you're moving on through this experience, that you have many parts of yourself that you can converse with, and that even though the mental body has been most active all during your life and your responses have been from the mental body cued by the emotional body, that you can now have the ability to respond from your higher spiritual self or from crown chakra awareness. There is no interference in the crown chakra. In the third eye, there are interfering patterns that come from the lower chakras because of the emotions that are connected and entrapped within the emotional movement of the chakra patterns. And the 5th chakra is the place where it is that the venting or the allowing of energies that have been built up, whether it's in the mental body or in the sphere of the physical, are able to be expressed, and therefore expressed with awareness is one thing, but expressed from a place of habit and old patterns is something totally different. And therefore your throat is a screening process. Everything that you swallow is screened through the throat. Everything that you speak is screened through the throat. The heart itself is a pure mechanism for bringing information into your body, mind, spirit. the heart is capable of absorbing information that isn't just auditory or visual, but it's much of the kinesthetic nature, and it can deliver information and correct information to the human to be delivered into their surroundings. Remember these things, because this is where the interference is happening. If you find that the frequencies that are being emitted by some of the AI intelligence are counteractive or counterproductive to your way of being on the planet, or what it is your heart is telling you to do, you have the ability. You don't have to rely on other other pieces of equipment, other transistors, other informational codes to shift what is happening. You have the power within yourself. And therefore, having turned over the power, the human has done for a long time, to those who can play the role of being far more adequate or far more intense or far more affluent, whatever there is that is carrying power, that giving over the energy has become very much a habit. And so those habits, as we have said for many years, are part of what it is we're talking about. And therefore, the flowing of the brothers of light into this realm is becoming quite natural. And therefore, there are those energies that will carefully modulate themselves and join in with what is happening, or they will also interfere with what is happening. So being awake and aware, using all the techniques that you know to keep your body, mind, and spirit free of entity activity is really important at this particular time. Know that you're far more powerful than you have been in the past, and that is the truth of it. And the more awakened one becomes, the more power that comes through them, and the less of the negativity and the influences of the past can interfere with what is being broadcast. So think of yourself as a broadcasting system, and everything that you broadcast is to be for your own highest good. No longer holding on to the idea that you have to please someone else. It is integrity that we're talking about. Dignity for others, but integrity for self. And so this frequency that we are able to tap into has to do with how it is that we have been in the past, in situations and in life streams, life itself. We have been there, and we know what is happening in your body, mind, and spirit. And therefore, if you relax and you give permission for, just call it your higher self, because you're not giving over your power to anyone else at that particular moment. You give it to yourself, that is the highest quality inside of self, and then you won't have to be interpreting what it is that is coming through your mouth or what it is that you feel the best response will be. You can trust it. And you can also preface that with, please show me nothing but the highest possibilities from myself and from others. And that way you cut down on how many people you're going to have to interact with, or how many will be counteracting your way of being in the world. You won't even run into them. So you're setting the screen, or you're setting the motion, the stage. You're setting a stage for what it is you wish to have happen in your life. And there's no longer a need for confrontation at every turn. There's no longer a need for one to prove themselves as right or to prove the other is wrong. There is no longer a need within the psyche of the human. It can be in the ego, which will cross itself over, as in the veil of Maya it does. But there is no need for one to preempt what it is that someone else is saying, or to assume that they are to have to hold their power themselves, because you are well guided and you are well supported, and your sovereignty is that aspect of your world that is most active in your unconscious mind at this time. All right. So